Detention again. It's not my fault. My worst enemy is to the right of me, and I have to restrain myself from body slamming her. She's the one who got me here. She's the she she's the one who's nasty. She's the jerk, not me. Mr. Brown strolls into the cramped room like he owns the world. Mr. Brown is the worst. He's my geography teacher, and the second worst person in the history of humanity. The first person is right next to me. No one wants to sit next to me, because they know I'll rip out their spine when no one is looking. Public school is a synonym for medieval torture, so I decided to give public school a taste of their own medicine. I turn my attention back to Mr. Brown when I hear him snarl, "Get in here, now." Who is he talking to? Who could possibly... My thoughts are interrupted by the most joyful face in the world. No one's supposed to be joyful in detention. Not even my best friend. Not even the best person in the history of humanity. Noah. I have to stop myself from screaming. I can't hide the joy, though. I beam. Luckily, no one notices. He plops himself into the only chair available, the one left of me. I try to get his attention, but he completely ignores me. After the first 15 minutes, when Mr. Brown isn't looking, he signs to me in sign language. We both know it, though no one else at school does. We have to know it because my little brother is deaf, and we sometimes act out books to him. Look, what's that supposed to mean? Noah twists his face into a model of Mr. Brown, furrowing his eyebrows and wrinkling his forehead. Mr. Brown turns his head. Noah doesn't notice, though. I sign to him urgently under my chair. Stop! He looks at me confused. Then when he sees Mr. Brown coming toward us, he smiles and acts like nothing is wrong. I sometimes don't understand Noah. So joyful. Yet drowning in all the bad things that could possibly happen to one in a day. He doesn't live for anyone, yet it seems like he's living for everyone. Mr. Brown frowns and looks at the pair of us suspiciously. Noah smiles again. This is even more confusing about him. He smiles whenever he just got in trouble. It feels... Mr. Brown looks at me. His gaze feels like fire, burning my back, slowly searing through my bones. Noah smiles at him and raises his hand jubilantly. Mr. Brown turns around and stomps back up to the front of the room and grunts. Sometimes I feel like Noah is living for me. He drowns for me, runs for me, falls for me. He runs off a cliff just for me, and survives the fall just for me. And that's all I got.
Yeah, so what I found very interesting in that story, and I thought you incorporated elements of lightness in a really interesting and surprising way, were the fact that you contrasted a light character, or a character that embodied lightness, against a character that embodied heaviness. So in Emma's poem, she attempted to perform lightness in the poetics of writing itself. So in other words, the voice or the language of her poem could be called light, or could be said to have lightness. In your story, it's not the prose that enacts lightness, it's the character of Noah. So the protagonist herself, the speaker, the narrator of the story, is this kind of dour, grumpy character who begins by, I mean, she's kind of funny. She said when makes that joke about body slamming her, or she talks about public school being a new form of medieval torture. She's very funny, but in general, she has this kind of like dour negativity about her, and she perceives in Noah a kind of lightness because Noah's always smiling. He's very joyful. He manages somehow to exude lightness, to elide and evade authority, um, with this kind of like light attitude that he has. The way he carries himself is very light. So you did a really interesting job of kind of contrasting those two characters, which I thought was pretty great. It's especially interesting to see Noah filtered through the perception of a character that is herself not particularly light. She's very heavy, I would say. So we perceive lightness through heaviness. It's kind of interesting. I think it's really smart. Thanks for sharing it.